What's up, movie fans? Guys, this is a video that I have wanted to do for a really long time. This was actually the first director filmography ranking that I wanted to do on my channel. I decided I should probably wait until The Odyssey comes out, and now The Odyssey is finally out. So today it is time to rank every Christopher Nolan movie from the worst to the best. Now, obviously, you probably know who Christopher Nolan is if you're watching this video. He is objectively one of the greatest movie directors of all time. He has just made so many movies in the 21st century that have been praised by both critics and audiences alike for telling very complex stories that get really thematically interesting, while also just being very entertaining to watch and having a lot of big spectacle. He really has been the blockbuster king over the course of the past 20 or so years, and he has just made so many absolute masterpieces that I am so excited to talk about. I don't even think I realized just how incredible of a director this man truly is until I watched all of his movies back to back, including ones that I had seen many times before and ones that I had never seen and I watched for the first time for this video. This man just really is a genius. He's known for using a ton of practical effects in his movies, even though they get really big. He is known for non-linear storytelling. When you watch a Christopher Nolan movie, it's rarely ever told in a linear fashion. There's normally something going on with time. He is known for having really loud music. Sometimes his music is so loud that you can't hear the dialogue, which is weird, but it's part of his style. He is known for crafting movies with very complex, often a little bit confusing plots, and he is known for killing off a lot of his main characters' wives, which, once again, is really weird, but it's a thing that he's known for. Anyway, that's enough of an introduction. Let's get into the ranking. This is one of the hardest rankings that I have ever had to do on my channel. But with that being said, the last place spot was pretty easy. Number 13, the worst Christopher Nolan movie, is Tenet. I really did not care for Tenet. Like I said, Christopher Nolan is known for making movies that can get very confusing, but with most of his movies like that, I think they are still easy to follow for the most part as long as you pay attention. This is the one film in Nolan's filmography that I could not follow at all. This movie is too confusing, and weirdly enough, it feels like it is designed that way. The movie just kind of starts without really giving you a lot of background on anything that is going on with the film. You're just introduced to this main character played by John David Washington, who's on a mission for this one organization, but then it turns out that this mission wasn't real and it was a test, and he gets recruited to another organization. They never tell you anything about the organization that he's recruited to and what exactly they do, and they never tell you anything about John David Washington's character. You don't even learn his name. No joke, he is canonically just called the protagonist throughout the entire movie.
I realized I wasn't working for you. We've both been working for me. I'm the protagonist.
And then from there, the movie introduces like this whole weird idea about how like this organization can invert certain people and objects in time so that those people and objects move in reverse while everything else is moving normally. And I won't lie, that's a cool idea on paper, and it leads to some really, really cool action sequences in the film, but it also falls apart if you think about it for more than like 10 seconds. Like, what do you mean these objects are moving backwards in time? Like, if a gun that's going backwards in time shoots something, the bullets were there before the gun shot that thing. So, like, was like this window that got shot built with the bullet holes already in it? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And yet that is the central premise of the movie. Beyond that, this is probably the Nolan movie that I found to be the least thematically interesting. Like, it doesn't really have an emotional core. I didn't really care about the characters that much. I don't know, like, the protagonist forms a little bit of a friendship with Robert Pattinson's character. I didn't really care that much. There's a whole subplot where, like, the main villain of this movie, played by Kenneth Branagh, is abusing his wife, played by Elizabeth Debicki, and so the protagonist kind of helps her, but I didn't really care about her that much. Like, I don't know, it's just a very, very bizarre film. It is easily the worst movie that Christopher Nolan has ever made, and in my opinion, it is his only bad film. Number 12, Following. It's always interesting when we get to a movie like Following on this list, because this is actually Christopher Nolan's first movie. It is a very, very low budget student film that he made in the 90s. And often when I'm doing these director rankings, it's kind of like up in the air if the director's first movie is going to be good or not. The last director ranking I did was Edgar Wright, and his first movie was not good, but I am happy to report I actually liked Following. It's not, like, amazing or anything. Obviously, it's not one of Nolan's best, but it is just a really compelling little thriller film. The movie is about this really, really weird guy who basically stalks people as a hobby. Like, no joke, he literally just chooses somebody to follow every day and just follows them for no reason. And then he meets a guy who, get this, also has a really, really weird hobby where he breaks into people's houses for fun. Once again, not for any particular reason, just to mess with them, really. And these two very weird guys form a, I don't want to say unlikely friendship, because they were kind of made for each other, but they form a partnership and they start working together to scam people. And from there, the movie goes into a lot of really weird, interesting directions. There's a lot of twists and turns. I was pretty hooked to this movie. I thought it was very compelling. It's also pretty short, so you don't waste a lot of time watching it. Once again, not one of Nolan's best. This is probably another one of Nolan's more confusing movies. This one has a lot of non-linear storytelling, and the timeline is a little bit weird, but still, mostly a pretty good movie. Number 11. I think this is going to be my first hot take on the list because people actually really like this movie. But at number 11, I have Dunkirk. This is a war movie made by Christopher Nolan in the 2010s. It tells the true story of the Dunkirk evacuation during World War II, where thousands of British and French troops were trapped on a beach by German forces, but they were miraculously rescued. And I think it is a very good movie. I have seen this film twice now. I watched it for the second time for this ranking, and it does tell its story in a way that can be very, very harrowing and tense. You never really feel safe while you're watching the movie. You are constantly in fear that the main characters are going to get killed by German forces. And I also think as you get to the second half of this film, it can often be very inspiring and even a bit emotional. But it's just never really stood out to me as much as a lot of Nolan's other movies, mainly because this movie doesn't put a lot of effort into really getting you to care about its characters. You don't really dive that deep into them. They're just kind of vessels for you to follow the plot. And I don't know, like, I like them. I think it's compelling enough, but it's just never really jumped out at me. This is another one that does some really, really weird stuff with non-linear storytelling, where the film is following three main plot lines, one on land, one in the air, and one on the sea. And each of the plot lines takes place in a different amount of time. The one on land starts a week before the end of the film, the one at sea starts a day before the end of the film, and the one in the air starts an hour before the end of the film. And I think that's interesting on paper, but in execution, they didn't really do a lot with it. Like, you don't really feel the different passage of time in any of these plot lines. The only real way that it affects the movie is sometimes in the land plot line, it's nighttime, and that's pretty much it. Once again, a very good movie. I enjoyed all three plot lines. The one on the boat has always been my favorite. I think that plot line is very, very sad and compelling, but still, it's just never really been one of my favorite Nolan movies. Number 10. I actually think this is a pretty underrated film, Insomnia. This is one of Nolan's earliest films, and people don't really talk about this movie a lot anymore, and when they do talk about it, they generally just say, it's okay. It's just not that special by Christopher Nolan standards. And I honestly kind of have to disagree. I thought that it was a really, really compelling thriller movie. It's not as creative or abstract as a lot of Nolan's other works, probably because this is actually the only movie in Nolan's filmography that he didn't write himself, but still, it tells an interesting story. The film follows this veteran detective played by Al Pacino who journeys to this one town in Alaska where the sun never sets to investigate into this gruesome murder and find the person who killed a local teen. And that is what the movie is about for about 30 minutes, and then a big twist happens very early on in the movie that kind of throws the entire movie into a completely different trajectory than what I thought was going to happen. I don't really want to spoil what happens exactly, but basically it forces Al Pacino to work with the killer, who is played by Robin Williams. And like I said, in general, I thought this was a very compelling film. I thought Al Pacino's character was really interesting, as this movie kind of explores a lot of like his guilt over the things that he's been forced to do in the past. He has insomnia and he is being kept up at night. And I thought it was interesting. Al Pacino's performance never really felt bored, but but he definitely did sell the idea that this man has not slept in multiple days. His character just felt like so tired and weary throughout the entire movie, and I thought it was a very interesting performance. I also really liked Robin Williams' performance in this movie, which I was surprised about because honestly, I wasn't sure if I would be able to take him seriously as this character. Like, it's Robin Williams. He's one of the most wholesome actors ever. I didn't think I was going to be able to take him seriously as this scary murderer dude. But he did a great job. He was sufficiently creepy throughout the entire movie. I just think it's a solid movie. Once again, not one of Nolan's best, but still good. Number 9, The Dark Knight Rises. So this is a movie that I have talked about a lot before on my channel because I'm a massive Batman fan. And The Dark Knight Rises is interesting because it has been a movie that has been very polarizing ever since it first came out, where some people absolutely love it and some people think that it is a very disappointing ending to the Dark Knight trilogy. I have always been on the former half of people, but I'm not gonna lie, as I get older and I think about and rewatch this movie more and more, I understand more and more where the latter half of people are coming from. The Dark Knight Rises is a very ambitious movie where, like, you look at this film's plot and it's like the first half of the movie is about Bruce kind of being retired from being Batman and having to get back into the swing of things and come back to be Batman to beat Bane. And then he gets his back broken, and the second half of the movie is about him trying to heal his back and escape from this prison in order to stop Bane. It's kind of like two movies in one. Like, those two plots, those could carry an entire movie all on their own. And as a result, I do think there are a lot of things in this movie that are very rushed. There are a lot of areas in this film that I think are very overstuffed. I think the thing that really jumped out at me on rewatch, I think the romance between Batman and Catwoman in this movie is kind of terrible. Like, it is easily the worst Batman-Catwoman relationship that I have ever seen in a movie before. They just do not have any chemistry with each other at all. They never really mention any romantic interest between them, and then they just randomly kiss out of nowhere at the end of the movie, and it just feels very rushed. And then you also have Talia al Ghul thrown in here as like another love interest, and I just don't like her character at all in this movie. I honestly think she might be the second worst villain in a live-action Batman movie, only behind the version of Bane from Batman and Robin. So yeah, just a lot of problems with this film. With that being said, I still really like it. I still think that it is a very solid, satisfying ending to the trilogy. I really like Bruce's arc in this movie, where at the start of the film, he's depressed. He doesn't see a future for himself. He doesn't feel like he has anything left to live for. And then, through coming back as Batman, he gains the will to live once again, and he gets his happy ending. I really like that. I think there are several moments in this movie that just give me chills every time I watch it. In particular, the scene where Bruce gains the strength to crawl out of the pit. I really like Batman's final emotional scenes with Gordon and Alfred in this movie. They make me tear up every time. I'm not gonna lie, I actually think this is probably Michael Caine's best performance in a Christopher Nolan movie, which is saying a lot because Michael Caine is in a lot of Christopher Nolan movies. And I like Bane. I think Bane is a fun villain. I know the voice is stupid, but I also kind of like how silly it is. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that I really, really like about The Dark Knight Rises. I just don't love it as much as I used to. Alright, this is the point of this video where this list gets really, really hard. All 8 of the movies that we have left are masterpieces. I would give every single one of these films a 9 out of 10 or higher. I adore these films, and choosing between them for this ranking was genuinely torture. With that being said, number 8 is Batman Begins. It feels so long to say that because I have loved this movie for pretty much my entire life, but watching all of these movies back to back, unfortunately, I did have to put Batman Begins lower than the other ones. With that being said, I still absolutely love this movie. It is, in my opinion, in the holy trinity of superhero origin movies, right alongside Iron Man and Spider-Man. I think this movie is just an incredible origin film that just manages to tell you Bruce Wayne's entire life story and his entire journey to becoming Batman in a really interesting way. I think this film gets everything right about Batman's character. It sells the fact that he is this crazy guy who is vengeful and wants to avenge his parents by any means necessary, but it also sells him as this very, very noble person who isn't willing to break his moral code, isn't willing to kill anyone, and that's what sets him apart from the villains like Ra's al Ghul. I just think everything about his character is really, really compelling. I said in the past Christian Bale was not my favorite Batman actor. I would like to retract that statement. On rewatch, no, he is definitely the best Batman actor, and I was insane for ever saying otherwise. Other things that I really love about this movie, I love all of the other performances. I think Michael Caine is the best iteration of Alfred that we have ever gotten in live action. I think Gary Oldman is the best iteration of Gordon that we've ever gotten in live action. I really like Rachel. I really like Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. I don't think enough people talk about him. He's a lot of fun in this movie. I really like Morgan Freeman as Lucius, and I really like Ra's al Ghul as a villain, even if I do think that Liam Neeson is wildly miscast in that role. Another thing that really stood out to me about Batman Begins on rewatch is that this movie does not take itself anywhere near as seriously as I remembered it taking itself. This movie can get a lot more comic booky and goofy than the other 2 movies in the trilogy, and I just really thought that was interesting. I did not remember that element of it. Alright, moving on to number 7. This is a movie that I watched for the first time for this ranking, The Prisoner. Prestige. This is a film that I had always heard for years was just an absolute masterpiece, and it really did live up to the hype. I absolutely loved The Prestige. This film tells a very, very compelling story about two magicians, Robert Angier, who is played by Hugh Jackman, and Alfred Borden, who is played by Christian Bale. And these two magicians used to work together, but then one of their acts went horribly wrong. Borden basically caused the death of Angier's wife, and as a result, the two of them form this bitter rivalry with each other, and the movie takes place over multiple years as these two people basically dedicate their lives to trying to tear each other down by sabotaging each other's acts, by stealing each other's ideas, constantly trying to one-up each other. It is just a very, very interesting movie that gets way darker and way more intense than you would think it does, but I just thought it was such an interesting movie. I thought the two lead characters in this movie were incredibly compelling. They are both incredibly unlikable people. I do not recommend going into this movie rooting for either of them, but they're also just so interesting because of the way that they are just unwilling to let this grudge that they have against each other go. And like I said, they just go to absolutely insane lengths to try and beat each other. It's just a very interesting movie. This movie has a plot twist that is very, very famous, and I knew that going into the film, but I didn't really know what the plot twist was, and so throughout the entire movie, I was trying to figure it out. And when you get to the end of the movie and it is revealed, I thought it was just masterfully done. After it's revealed, I kind of thought, wow, that was kind of obvious, but the movie does such a good job at making you overthink it. And that's kind of the point. It's a magic trick. You go into it wanting to overthink it, wanting to be fooled, and as a result, you miss the fact that the way that the trick is done is actually pretty obvious. Like, that's just incredible that Christopher Nolan managed to tie the, themes of magic tricks into the themes of the movie. It is just a very, very well done film that I really, really loved. Number 6, another one of Christopher Nolan's most popular films, Interstellar. This is another one that I watched for the first time for this video, and after I finished the movie, I actually had to sit on it for a while, just kind of thinking about and processing it, because it is a very, very deep and complex film. And ultimately, I have concluded this is the Christopher Nolan movie with the strongest emotional core. Basically, this movie takes place in a dystopian future where Earth is running out of resources, people are dying, and scientists have concluded that the planet is going to die. There is no way to save it, so as a Hail Mary, they send a ton of astronauts into space to try and find a new planet that humanity can move to. But there's a catch. As the astronauts go farther and farther into space, time starts moving differently. So every day they spend out there, years are going by on Earth. And Cooper, the main character of this movie, who is played by Matthew McConaughey, has children that he has to leave behind for this mission. And so while he's doing this mission, his children are growing old without him. So the movie kind of comes from two perspectives. On the one hand, you're following Cooper, but you also frequently cut back to Earth to Cooper's daughter, Murph, who is played by Jessica Chastain. And the movie kind of explores their differing perspectives on everything. Murph kind of grows to resent her father over time for essentially abandoning her, but she also kind of understands why he felt like he had to do this. And over the course of the movie, she kind of grows to understand him more and more. And meanwhile, Cooper, over the course of the movie, is just desperately trying to get back to Earth as soon as possible to see his children again. And he's growing to regret his decision. It is an emotionally devastating movie. If you did not cry during this movie, I don't think you are human. But at the same time, despite how sad the movie can get, it also really, really works as this inspiring, uplifting tale about how the love between this father and daughter kind of transcends time and space. And as cliche as that is, it's also just really, really sweet, and it's handled really, really well in this movie. I really, really got attached to this film. Like I said, it did make me cry twice. This movie got me to cry twice. It is a very, very sad film. But it still comes to an ultimate resolution that I found to be just so satisfying. It's an incredible film. It's also one of Nolan's best directed movies. It looks incredible. It sounds incredible. The score of this movie is so pretty. The visual effects were just amazing. With that being said, I have one big problem with Interstellar, and it's the reason it's not higher up on this list. I thought the third act got a little bit too silly. I feel like if you've seen this movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. The third act of this film just asked me to suspend my disbelief a little bit farther than I could extend it. And so that's kind of my big criticism with this movie. With that being said, it's still really, 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 really good. And the fact that this film can't be higher on this list is just really sad because I did love it. Alright, number 5. I actually had a really, really hard time deciding between the next two movies on this list. I went back and forth between them a lot, but ultimately it came down to which one would I rather rewatch. And when I asked that question, ultimately number 5 ended up being Oppenheimer. Obviously, this is one of Nolan's most recent movies. It's also one of his most popular movies, and it is the movie that finally won him his Oscar. All of that praise is absolutely deserved. Oppenheimer is still one of my favorite movies of the 2020 decade, and it is probably my favorite biopic that I have ever seen. This film obviously tells the true story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, and it tells his story in such an interesting and compelling way, where the movie is essentially split into 3 parts. The first hour of the movie explores J. Robert Oppenheimer before he made the atomic bomb, when he was just an arrogant young scientist. It explores how he grew into this arrogant older scientist. Then the middle of the movie explores him actually building the atomic bomb. And it's really, really interesting as you essentially see how his arrogance led him to build this weapon of mass destruction, even though he knew that it would kill hundreds of thousands of people, and yet he still went through with it. And then the third hour of the movie, which in my opinion is the strongest part of the movie, explores how he grew to regret it, how he grew to realize the gravity of what he had done, the gravity of what he had started, and you just see this fear grow inside of him and this existential dread. I really, really think it is just such a compelling movie that just takes you on this deep, dark, dense journey through this one man's life. And it does it with phenomenal directing, a phenomenal score, amazing cinematography. It's just an incredible movie. And I think the best thing about Oppenheimer are the performances. In particular, the three Oscar-nominated performances. Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., and Cillian Murphy are all crazy good in this movie. Honestly, Emily Blunt is better than I remember her being. Like, she really stood out to me on rewatch. That one scene towards the end of the movie where she just tears in to the board that has been criticizing Oppenheimer the entire movie, and she just humiliates the one guy in front of all of his colleagues. I love that scene so much. It is so satisfying. Robert Downey Jr. does a great job playing this vengeful a-hole who is trying to get back at Oppenheimer for humiliating him years ago. I hated his character. And Cillian Murphy, dude, he gives the best lead performance in any Christopher Nolan movie. He just sells everything about Oppenheimer's character, from his young arrogance all the way up to his old regret. Like, yeah, it's just such an incredible movie. And the final scene of this movie, I don't want to, say too much, because I don't really want to, spoil it. I mean, it's a true story. But, the final scene of this film has filled me with existential dread for the past 3 years. It is probably my favorite movie scene of this decade so far, as you just have one last conversation between Oppenheimer and Einstein that just basically tells you what the point of the movie is without outright stating it. And as you're watching it, you just suddenly feel so much fear as you realize what Oppenheimer started in this movie and in real life. It's just so good. Number 4, the reason we're making this video, The Odyssey, the newest Christopher Nolan movie, is one of his best. I was going to make a full review of this movie after I watched it, but then I kind of thought, nah, why bother? Everybody already knew that this movie was going to be amazing. It is Christopher Nolan, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, adapting the most iconic and influential fictional story ever written. And it is just as awesome as I thought it was going to be. This movie is a spectacle. I was just in awe of this film while I was watching it in theaters. It is just a beautiful movie to look at. The effects in this film are incredible. The cinematography is incredible. Nolan really managed to sell the size and scope of this story. I was just so captivated by it. This is probably Nolan's best looking movie since Interstellar. It's just so good. And I also thought this movie did a really good job at adapting its central story. I feel like I don't need to tell most people what the Odyssey is about, but I suppose I'm gonna do it anyway. It is about Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, and the hero of the Trojan War, who in this movie is played by Matt Damon, going on a journey back home after winning the Trojan War. However, on his voyage home, he ends up angering the gods and having what I can only describe as the worst road trip ever, all while he is trying to return home to his wife Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, and his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland. I think this movie did a great job at making the journey back to Ithaca feel harrowing as you just go through all of these terrifying obstacles over the course of the movie. And I mean terrifying. There were scenes in the Odyssey where it just straight up turns into a horror movie. The scene with the Cyclops and the scene with the witch Circe in particular, those were two really, really creepy sequences that just really got under my skin as I was watching this movie. And I also just think that this movie does a great job with the characters, as throughout this movie, you just really feel the conviction from Odysseus to get home. I think Matt Damon did such a great job with this character. And then I also thought that the devotion of Penelope to her husband, even as he's away for 20 years, was also just really strong in this movie. Anne Hathaway, she was my favorite performance in this movie. I haven't seen a lot of people saying that, but she was so good in this film, in my opinion. I really hope she gets nominated for an Oscar. I also thought Robert Pattinson was really, really good in this movie as kind of its villain. Like, he's a suitor who's trying to marry Penelope to take over the throne of Ithaca before Odysseus gets back. And I thought he just did a great job as this very, very sleazy, hateable character. And then I also thought The Odyssey was a really interesting movie thematically, where this movie uses the story of The Odyssey to explore a lot of themes about like PTSD and trauma, and how Odysseus kind of like feels like he's not the same person anymore and kind of regrets a lot of the things that he was forced to do during the Trojan War. Like, yeah, it's just such a good movie. It's easily one of the best movies that I've seen this year, and yet it's still only Christopher Nolan's fourth best movie. Yeah, like I said, I had a hard time deciding between The Odyssey and Oppenheimer. I think they're both amazing movies in very different ways. Ultimately, the final decision came down to which one I would rather rewatch more. And, I mean, The Odyssey is like an epic action movie, and Oppenheimer is a 3-hour movie about a bunch of people talking in boardrooms where, like, one bomb goes off 2 hours in, so, like, was never really gonna win that battle. Still, amazing movies. I don't know how I'm going to land on them a few years from now. Maybe I'll actually prefer Oppenheimer again, but for now, this is where I landed. Number 3, Memento. One of Christopher Nolan's first movies, and one that is still widely talked about and praised to this day. And I think that is because of how experimental this movie is. If you don't know, Memento is about this man named Leonard Shelby, who is played by Guy Pearce, who is trying to track down the man who murdered his wife. Sounds like a simple enough premise, but there's a catch. He has short-term memory loss. He cannot remember anything that happened after the death of his wife, and he forgets everything every few minutes. And so you're following a protagonist in a mystery movie who is constantly forgetting the new information that he's learning. Now, I imagine if you were to play that movie completely straight, it would probably be really annoying because it's like the main character is forgetting the information that the audience is learning throughout the entire movie. That sounds irritating. So here's where Memento gets really experimental. This movie plays backwards. That's its gimmick. The movie is backwards. Every scene comes before the scene that you just watched. I think it's kind of funny that this is one of Christopher Nolan's earliest movies because it's like, it doesn't get more non-linear than this. Like, this is kind of the peak of his non-linear storytelling obsession. Like, he literally put all of the scenes in this movie out of order, and it's just such a fascinating movie. It has been one of my personal favorite movies for years now. I just find the journey to be so interesting. The movie does such a great job at putting you in Leonard's shoes. Like, every scene, he has no idea what's going on. He has no idea where he is, how he got there. Guess what? You don't know either. You literally haven't seen it yet. It's just such an interesting movie because you're following him on this mystery where you already know the ending, and the entire movie, you're just trying to piece together how he got there, and every scene, you think that you're starting to understand it, and then a new piece of information gets introduced that just completely throws you off. And then beyond that, I also think this is a very strong movie emotionally. Like, Leonard Shelby is just such a sad character to follow because it's like, his whole life is revenge. All he knows is this guy killed his wife, and he wants to find this guy. All he ever feels is grief. It is the one memory he has. And the way that the movie ends, I don't want to spoil anything, but just once you get to that final reveal, I still remember the first time I watched this movie, I was just absolutely floored. And I just had to sit there for a few minutes just processing what I just watched. An amazing movie. Still only number 3 though. Number 2, Inception. Full disclosure, Inception is another movie that I have already seen before, and if you had asked me to rank every Christopher Nolan movie before I started working on this video, I probably would have put Inception a little bit lower on the list. I probably would have put it below Memento and Oppenheimer. But on rewatch, I kind of realized something about this movie. This movie has the coolest premise that has ever been in any movie ever. If you don't know what Inception is about, basically, this is a heist movie that takes place inside a person's mind. In this universe, there are people called extractors who are hired to go inside of of someone's subconscious while they are sleeping to steal information. And the movie is about Dom Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is the world's best extractor, and he is hired for a job that is considered impossible. Inception. Instead of going inside someone's mind to steal information, going inside someone's mind to plant an idea. And this movie is just so cool. Like, the premise that I just explained to you is already super cool. It's better in the movie. Like, in execution, it is just so fascinating to watch this movie get introduced to this concept that is so weird, wacky, and abstract, and just have all of this different information revealed about it over the course of the movie. This film's plot is insanely well thought out. There are just so many layers to it. The movie has to give you so much exposition over such a long period of time, where you're learning about how, like, people's dreams can be layered, and how if you die in a dream, you wake up, but if you die in a dream and you're too heavily sedated, you never wake up, and just all of these different, like, really, really weird concepts where you just watch it and you're kind of like, how did they even think of this? Like, how long did this movie take to write? And the answer to that is 10 years. I'm not joking. I looked it up. Christopher Nolan spent 10 years writing the screenplay to this movie. That is just insane, but it really, really paid off because it is just such an interesting film. It's also just a really good heist movie. Like, it gives into all of the heist movie tropes where you have, like, a crew full of people that you enjoy following. You've got a stacked cast in this movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, all of whom you just get really attached to over the course of the movie. I loved their interactions with each other. You have a really, really well thought out heist where over the course of the movie things start to go wrong and they have to improvise, and you're constantly on your toes wondering what's going to happen next. And in the midst of it all, you have yet another amazing Christopher Nolan emotional core, where this is another movie that revolves around a dead wife. In this film, Leonardo DiCaprio's character lost his wife years ago, and he's haunted by it. A big plot point in this movie is how he cannot dream without seeing her. She's the love of his life, but ever since he lost her, she's kind of become a curse to him because of the sorrow that he feels. And a large part of this movie is about him kind of trying to work through his grief. It is just so emotionally powerful. Like, this is one of Nolan's strongest movies emotionally. There's some scenes in this movie that actually got me to tear up a little bit. It had to come up at number 2 on this list. And yet still, there is one Christopher Nolan movie that is better than it. And you already know what it is. It's The Dark Knight. Number 1 is The Dark Knight. I'm sorry to be boring, but you know what? Some things are popular for a reason. The Dark Knight is Christopher Nolan's best movie. I have loved this movie ever since I was a kid, and I swear, every time I rewatch it, I am just reminded of how perfect it is. This is a perfect movie. Like, people always talk about the Joker in this movie. It's the one thing that people just always go back to. They talk about how amazing Heath Ledger is as the Joker. But I swear, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, yes, he's the best part of the movie by far. He is one of the greatest movie villains of all time. He is just an absolutely terrifying villain who's also really, really funny. Like, he is so entertaining in this movie, but at the same time, you're constantly uneasy every time you're watching him because of how pure evil he is. Like, he is demonic. He has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Like, every time you think maybe they're introducing a sympathetic element to him, it turns out he just made it up. Like, he is just this satanic creature who feels like he came into existence just to cause as much chaos as possible. And like I said, he is probably my second favorite movie villain of all time, just behind Darth Vader. But once again, he's only the tip of the iceberg. This movie also just uses him to tell an incredibly compelling story about Batman. Batman Begins was all about Batman's no-kill rule, how he is just unwilling to break it under any circumstances. So what do we do in the sequel? We introduce a villain who has no moral code whatsoever. He cannot be redeemed. He cannot be negotiated with. And so the question is asked, at what point does Batman need to break this rule? Like, does he need to? Can the Joker be stopped any other way? And it's just so compelling. Like, people always talk about Heath Ledger in this movie, but every other performance is amazing too. Christian Bale, Gary Oldman, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Aaron Eckhart is so good as Two-Face in this movie, and barely anyone talks about him, but I'm not even kidding. He's probably my second favorite villain in the Dark Knight trilogy behind the Joker. I love the way that they handle his story, as he is this well-meaning guy who just wants to do the right thing, and then he gets warped into this terrifying monster. It is this chaotic crime thriller that just keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout the entire film, as you're just watching as the Joker has everyone around his thumb and is just causing all of this pure chaos. By the time you get to the second half of the movie, you're just wondering, how the heck are they going to stop this guy? Like, he holds all the cards. He can just casually say to everyone, kill this guy in an hour or I'm going to blow up a hospital. And they do it. It's just like, it is a movie that makes you feel like you are there. You never feel safe. You constantly feel like you are on the edge of your seat. And it is a movie that builds to a conclusion that, I'm gonna be honest here, more people need to talk about. Like, for how popular The Dark Knight is, rarely anyone ever talks about how inspiring the ending of this movie actually is, as you have the Joker trying to prove his point, trying to force these people on these two boats to kill each other, and yet they refuse. They don't play his game. And in that moment, the Joker's entire point about how people will break their moral codes if put into extreme situations just falls apart. And Batman just says to him,
"What were you trying to prove? That deep down, everyone's as ugly as you. You're alone."
You're all alone. Like, that's just such a cool line, and nobody ever talks about how cool it is. Like, I love The Dark Knight. I love this movie so much. I love this movie more than my non-existent children. Like, it is a masterpiece, and it is the best movie that Christopher Nolan has ever made. That is my ranking of every Christopher Nolan movie. This was a very, very long video, but that's okay sometimes. I had a lot to say about how masterful this man really is. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below, what is your favorite Christopher Nolan movie? And see ya, movie fans.